That optimism, it was being displayed by top officials on both sides. So, for example, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying that the mutual tariffs would have amounted to a near total blockade of goods from both countries, which neither side wants, and arguing, we do want trade, we want more balanced trade, and I think both sides are committed to achieving that. With him adding that the administration will push for China to open up more to U.S. goods, which would help narrow the U.S. trade deficit with China. And this, as he also told reporters, that the two countries had substantive discussions regarding American demands and trying to crack down on fentanyl-related chemicals entering the U.S. With him claiming that the Chinese government understood the magnitude of the fentanyl crisis in the U.S. and asserting that there is a positive path forward. And all of this is you at China's Ministry of Commerce saying that the talks this weekend were an important first step to resolving differences and urging the U.S. to, quote, completely rectify the mistake of unilateral tariffs and work together to inject more certainty and stability into the global economy. One of the big key takeaways here is that this is a massive deal. But as you have outlets like the Washington Post explaining, the agreement marks the first tangible move to de-escalate tensions that have been rising since Trump took office in January. But there's also, as you have experts saying, that despite the substantial de-escalation, this is by no means a permanent solution. This is good news.
That's just what we're going to do for now.
There's still major underlying issues, and this temporary agreement does little to actually change
thing, I'm going to try to fix
this economic superpowers. And this
catastrophe
folks like Harvard
of
economist
eyes
Danny Broderick noting
quickly.
that while the countries have taken a step back from a needless trade war, the U.S. tariffs in China are still high and will mainly hurt U.S. consumers. With Broderick adding that Trump has obtained absolutely nothing from China for all the chaos he generated. Zilch. We've seen many echoing that, saying that Donald Trump essentially was saying, hey, we're going to drive this car off the cliff, and then he turned the wheel at the last second and now wants to be awarded for it. Then, on the other side of this, you have others, including right-leaning media outlets, portraying the talks as a massive win for the U.S. and Trump's tariff policies, highlighting the positive response from the stock market, which notably did see massive rallies following the announcement, with the S&P 500 opening almost 3% higher, the Dow Jones
jumping 2.5%, and
NASDAQ soaring up nearly 4% as trading opening this morning. It wasn't just the U.S. market, international markets, especially in Asia, also rose significantly.
I do sing when I'm stressed.
As far as whether there will be long-term lasting impacts, we're just gonna have to wait to see and see if a more permanent solution can be reached in the next 90 days or so. Or if this is just another stop on the on-again, off-again chaos that continues to rattle global markets in the U.S. economy. And then,
otherwise,
more news for you in just 60 seconds. But first, it usually starts off pretty chill. A bill you forget about, or you just
don't hinder me.
This month. No biggie, right? Until the want to keep your hairline where it is?
So, an annoying part of squash.
That work best for you. So you
yeah,
can grow this
whatever, however you say it.
Hair in just 3 to 6 months. Keep it looking strong.
Is
to come with
it spreads?
Another, and suddenly your mailbox looks like a horror movie. Final notice, pay now, legal action pending. Your phone's blowing up, like you suddenly become super popular.
Like
spoiler alert, it's not your friends, it's debt collectors.
I don't usually cover shit up.
And that is exactly why I wish today's sponsor,
Blush,
existed back in the day when I was in.
That was like horrific.
They actually look at your specific situation with credit cards, personal loans,
such a bad way.
Those medical bills that we bury in the sock drawer. And here's a big thing. No minimum credit score is required. Even if your credit score looks like a golf score, PPS Debt will help you save, pay off debt faster, and actually keep money in your pocket. They're A+ rated by the BBB.
Pretty sure more is not better with Blush, but I just do it anyway.
People escape financial quicksand. Stop living in debt. You're just 30 seconds away from starting to get out, and you can get your free assessment at pbsdebt.com/DeBranco, or just scan the QR code to complete your free debt assessment to see what options are available to you. pbsdebt.com/DeBranco. Then, next up in the news, we need to talk about how Republicans now want to pay for Trump's big
it's pretty cool how I can
bill
like
by
do anything
cuts to Medicaid that will cause millions of poor
I
Americans to lose their health insurance and force millions more to face higher health care costs. Because Trump has
fell in love with someone in the process,
much of his domestic
but
agenda
still,
in
I did it.
Sweeping bill. And one of the centerpieces of that bill is $4.5 trillion in tax breaks, with much of that going to finance an extension of tax cuts that Trump put in place during his first term, but that are now set to expire this year. And so to pay for that, House Republicans are working to slash at least $1.5 trillion in other spending areas and directing.
We're leaving it like that for now, unfortunately.
The panel that was asked to make the biggest cuts by far is the Energy and Commerce Committee, which was directed to find at least $880 billion to cut. So as a result, it was widely expected that the committee would be proposing cuts to Medicaid and/or Medicare, which make up the vast majority of the spending that the panel oversees. Yesterday, what you saw was the committee rolling out a proposal that would cut an estimated $912 billion over the decade, with most of the cuts, $715 billion, coming from changes to Medicaid and Affordable Care.
The thing with being oil paint is I do it with my fingers.
Medicaid for 4 or childless adults, requiring that they prove that they're working 80 hours every month to stay enrolled. Require Medicaid beneficiaries who earn more than the federal poverty limit, about $15,650 for a single
We're gonna
person,
go with the
pay
blue
higher fees
first,
for
and we're
doctor
gonna
visits,
see
impose stricter
what it looks
eligibility
like.
verification and paperwork requirements
My
by
cat's waking
allowing
up from her
states to
nap.
check the income and residency of enrollees more often and terminate coverage for those who don't respond in
I'm just
time.
gonna do
Raise a tax
a
that some
little
states
dollop,
impose on
honestly.
providers who obtain more federal funding and pay for large portions
Way
of their
easier
Medicaid
than
programs,
leaving
as
this
well as
open.
make a number of smaller changes that touch on hot-button social issues like barring coverage for gender-affirming care for trans minors, purging roles of ineligible immigrants, and reducing federal funding for providers that also offer abortion services. So notably,
I really don't know what I'm gonna do because I've never done this before.
abortion specifically, so that move would just cut funding for other essential services provided by places like Planned Parenthood, like contraceptive access, cancer screenings, and more. And Republicans, who have long pushed for many of these measures unsuccessfully, they argue that they are necessary to generate savings and root out waste, fraud, and abuse. But this is, on the other side, you have Democrats saying these efforts are going to hurt millions of the most vulnerable Americans. With, among other things, the party circulating an analysis by the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office that estimated that this move, it would cost 8.6 million people their health insurance over a decade. And beyond that, Democrats have argued that this proposal will increase premiums for at-risk folks, force hospitals to shut down, and prevent seniors from accessing care. Though also, very notably here, it's not just Democrats who have opposed this effort. We've also seen some Republicans voicing opposition to the move, including Senator Josh Hawley, who wrote a New York Times op-ed literally titled, "Don't Cut Medicaid," where he argued, if Congress cuts funding for Medicaid benefits, Missouri workers and their children will lose their health care, and hospitals will close. It's that simple. And that pattern will